Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. As always, my name is Max McGuire.
And I'm Joe Otto.
And today, Joe, we're going to be talking about a couple things. We're going to be talking about the economic fallout and what that means for the suicide rate in the country, and generally about how the economic collapse of the country in the response to the coronavirus, how that's going to ruin lives, ruin livelihoods. And we're also going to talk about a report that we had out on Conservative Daily today, which is that the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, they're responsible for dispersing all foreign aid. They were caught sending PPE, personal protective equipment, and medical equipment overseas to foreign countries as foreign aid, while Americans are dying in hospitals that can't get their hands on that same equipment. So a jam-packed hour today, talking about a lot of really important stories.
You know, I'm a little encouraged, by the way. I don't know if you saw the test that they're doing with the 1,100 people in New York.
Yeah.
But preliminary results of those 1,100 people show a sharp decline in symptoms. And this is only after about half of the people that have been given the drug were given the drugs, right? Which is that almost a Z-Pack cocktail along with the
hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine,
It's a combo between the Z-Pack, which is it's actually an antibiotic, and hydroxychloroquine, which is a malaria drug. That combination, that cocktail, lots of other countries have said that it has success. They're doing the trial now. And yeah, what I've heard is that there's definitely some promising results there. But the White House was definitely quick to temper expectations yesterday and said they weren't going to release anything until they knew the actual results of the study. But they admitted that so far it looks good. There's no glaring bad news so far.
Yeah, well, the glaring bad news, I think, comes from a lot of other places, though, and that is we are willing to burn down our economy today to protect or look good. So we want to do what we think feels good, but doesn't necessarily do good, which is a typical reaction of the left, right? The loony left. Mm-hmm. And now we've all been sucked into it because we have the hysteria that's been created by the media. I'm just trying to figure out what else is happening behind the scenes that we're not being privy to that would cause them to say that 200,000 people lose their jobs, or lose their lives, and that that by itself is something that we should burn the economy down and put at risk, 50% of the population in the U.S. just to sacrifice that 50% to save a couple 100,000 people. And I'm not being callous or saying that every life doesn't matter, but if it mattered, why are we doing millions of abortions every year, and putting ourselves in a position where that life doesn't matter, but this life does? This life of a person that, let's be honest, some of those people made poor choices, right? They have health ailments that they made poor choices. They smoked, they drank, they didn't take care of themselves, put themselves in a bad position. And some of them aren't. Some of them it's just no fault of their own. They came down with something. I feel for those people. I feel for every person that loses their life over a virus or anything for that matter. But we've burned down our economy, burned it to the ground. Now we're giving back pennies to the American people.
Yeah.
And now we're being told that, hey, there's a second wave that's going to come, which, by the way, I don't believe the second wave is going to come. I don't believe 100,000 people are going to lose their life. I don't believe 200,000 people are going to lose their life. I believe we're going to get to 10,000, not 100,000, not 200,000. I think we'll get to 10,000. And that's a drop in the bucket to how many people lose their life on the flu. And we have a vaccine for the flu, and people lose their lives at a rate of 4 people every minute. The whole thing to me is just is completely I'm disgusted by what we're doing as a country. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is the Goldman Sachs report, which I think is pretty accurate in that we are willing to sacrifice we are willing to sacrifice the people in this country for that 100,000 or 2,000 people, and by their estimation, nearly 1 million people will commit suicide if we don't shake our heads and get out of this idea that we just don't need to let it ride its course.
Yeah, so there's 2 studies that we want to talk about and combine. There's not one study that says 1 million people will lose their lives, but when you combine the prior research with this new Goldman Sachs report, it definitely is very scary. So Goldman Sachs released on Tuesday their estimate that unemployment will shoot up to 15%, which would be a 12% increase. Now, we know from past studies that for every 1% unemployment that we gain, right? Every time the unemployment rate goes up 1%, roughly 60,000 Americans commit suicide. That's a crazy number, right? If the unemployment rate goes up 12%, and you look at that old study, that's suggesting we could see over 800,000 people commit suicide because of the economic strain put onto them and onto their families. It is a very sobering thought. And when you compare that to what the White House put out yesterday, which is that they are looking at their modeling suggests between 100,000 and 200,000 people dying in the United States from this. And then you say, well, wait a minute, does that mean that 800,000 people could die from suicide, right? The question we've been asking over and over again on this show is the juice worth the squeeze? And obviously we want to prevent the virus's spread. We want to prevent it from taking as many lives as possible. But if when all is said and done, we lose 4 times as many Americans to suicide as we do to the virus, then I think that we will have failed. I think that will have been a failure, no doubt.
Well, we haven't even started discussing what's going to happen when the $1,200 checks wear out. And by the way, the government does not. Oh, Max, I am beyond angry. And I have people that say they send emails saying, "Oh, you're not being compassionate." I don't want to be compassionate when I can't be compassionate for all of us, for everyone in the U.S. I don't. But what happens when that $1,200 check runs out? Where do you think people are going to go? They're going to loot. They're going to riot. They're going to say it's the government's fault. You got to give me more. Where's the more going to come from?
Yeah.
It's going to come from you. It's going to come from me. And how much more can we give? They shut down our economy.
Yeah.
And they didn't shut it down and say you have a choice. You have a choice to stay home. Now, you don't have a choice to stay home. You have to stay home. So, by the way, in addition to everything else we're doing, we're suspending your constitutional rights. You have no rights. Go home. You stay at home. We have to protect those that are the weakest among us.
Yeah.
Well, what about the businesses? They're the weakest among us. They're the ones that every day have the IRS walk through the door or some sort of state agency walk through the door and bark orders at us and say, "Oh, you did this wrong. You need to pay this penalty. Penalty, 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 penalty." Hey, we're gonna postpone your filing taxes on April 15th. We're going to postpone that for you. We're going to give you a reprieve on having to pay us as the plantation owner. You don't have to pay us. No, just hold off for a couple months. And in a couple months, when you're completely ruined, we're also going to tack on penalties, interest. We're going to come after you for everything you have, that house, that car, your job. We're going to levy your bank account. They're destroying everything this country stands for. Everything this country stands for is being destroyed to protect 100,000, 200,000 people. That's what's happening. Well, Jeff Bezos gets on TV and says, "Hey, I said I want to set up a fund. Why don't you guys send us some money? Send us money so that we can actually take care of our warehouse workers." Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The guy took out $3.5 billion in February, right before all this stuff fell.
Yeah.
And right when the market fell, he put it back in the marketplace. Hey, let's just make another $1 billion. I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled it back out again.
Yeah.
We are being played. We are being played. You have the massive corporations out there, and you have the federal government, and they are literally playing us as people. Do I feel for the million people that may die if it was a million? I do. I also feel for the other 329 million that are basically going to, let me take that back. 3 million of them will be fine, right? Because they work for or own these big corporations. Another 40 million will be great because they work for the federal government or they work for some government agency and they're still going to get paid. And then the rest of us burn. Please burn. We're going to burn while they watch it happen. So no, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
I'm past pissed. This has to stop. And the circus that they've created, that what I think is the deep state. I think this is the deep state. Let's burn down and destroy everything we stand for so that we can have this Green New Deal and make people have solar panels on their foreheads. This is garbage. It's absolute garbage.
Yeah, I mean, Congress was on vacation, and one day after coming back, they had the proposal, right? They had Nancy Pelosi's 1,100-page bill. They had it grew to 1,400 pages that next day. They were on vacation, and day one after they came back, they had over 1,100 pages of what they thought the country needed. And as you said, it was solar panels, it was wind energy, it was Green New Deal, it was making corporations report how much money every racial sector of their company, how much money they're paying people of different races, right?
What does that have to do? What does that have to do with saving the American people?
Yeah. What I'm saying is that the same Democrats who are advocating for closing down the economy, right? They swoop in at the end, and their solution is amnesty for every single illegal immigrant in the country, right? It's more foreign aid, which we're going to get to in the second half. It's Green New Deal policies. It's awfully coincidental that immediately after closing the economy, I understand where you're coming from, that the same people demanding that we close down the economy are now trying to use this as an excuse to get everything they've ever wanted, right? This isn't about helping the American people. It's about pushing their own agenda items across the finish line, which it's amazing with Democrats. Democrats are masters of projection. Projection is when you try and take something you're doing and accuse your opponent of doing it to basically shift the attention from you to them. So the Democrats accuse Republicans of only trying to help special interests, right, with the stimulus package, when it was the Democrats trying to get funding for Planned Parenthood, right? The Kennedy Center paid lobbyists to pressure Democrats into giving them $25 million. Immediately after getting the money, the Kennedy Center laid off every single one of their musicians in the orchestra, right? So Democrats accuse the Republicans of trying to help their special interests when it's Democrats doing that themselves. So yeah, it is awfully coincidental that during all of this, the party that stands to gain the most are the ones calling for a complete shutdown. Yeah, it definitely gets my spider sense tingling to see Nancy Pelosi out there, and you see how she's enriched herself. Her family has made so much money on like infrastructure contracts, and to see her out there saying that we need a $2 trillion infrastructure bill, when we know that her family and other members of Congress, their families have made money hand over fist on infrastructure projects, the whole thing stinks to high heaven. It smells, yeah.
And they don't have. There's no repercussions. There's no accountability. None. They can do what they want when they want, and we as royal subjects have to give them our money. Here, take it. Here's 30% of my blood, sweat, and tears that I did every single day. You take 30%. And then on April 15th, oh, please, maybe I can get a couple of those dollars back. Maybe it goes down to 24%. They're robbing us blind in 100 different ways. And again, I think I've just had enough. I'm not the only one that's had enough. I've had massive conversations with so many people on the economic spectrum from one end to the other, and they're all saying the same thing. They're scratching their head going, why?
Yeah.
Why are we out there taking loans that we're going to have to repay back to the government at an interest rate, right? Because obviously we're not getting it for interest free. Here's a loan. Hey, by the way, we're going to save you. We're going to save you with your own money. Then we're going to charge you interest on your own money. And by the way, don't you dare go outside your house. Yeah, and we're going to suspend your the whole thing. It smells.
It's like stabbing you in the back and then selling you the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
it definitely stinks. There are far too many people in Washington D.C. and around the country. I mean, you mentioned Bezos. There are far too many people who are. It really does seem like they're egging this on because they stand to gain from it. And I don't like to be so cynical. I wish I wasn't, but there's just too many examples of it. There's too much pork that was thrown into the bill to explain that away.
tell me how many people in the government are going to suffer right now? How many? How many people that work for the government are going to suffer right now? I'm going to already tell you, none. They're already living a socialist environment. They take from us, they keep it, they get paid no matter what.
Yeah, even when the government shuts down, they still get back pay.
100% they get back pay.
Yeah.
And then what do we get? What do we get? What do we as citizens get? Tell me what we get. I haven't been this fired up in a long time, but I say to myself, what do we have to lose as people?
Yeah.
What do we have to lose? Because right now we have nothing. They're literally sucking us dry. 3.3 million people lose their jobs. That is probably somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 million. We haven't even started talking about contractors and people that are self-employed.
Yeah.
People that can't go and just get unemployment.
Yeah.
We're leaving them on the sidelines. And then we take our money and we give it to other countries. We can't even take care of our own people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, me and my wife, I mentioned this before, but my wife was laid off, and we went to call our bank, and since our mortgage isn't a federal mortgage, the bank, their deferment terms was basically you don't have to pay your loan for 3 months, but then on 3 months plus 1 day, you owe us 4 months of your mortgage right then and there. So I'm talking to our banker, and I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. That's not helpful. Telling me that I don't have to pay it now, but in 3 months I have to pay 4 months of my mortgage all at once. That's not very helpful at all.
That's actually not the way. That's actually not true.
That's how their bank is doing it. I got the whole form from them.
Well,
unless
they
you're already
can't
in
do
collections,
that. They have to fully defer. The Fed is actually helping subsidize that for banks. They cannot ask you for your full payments after 4 months. And again, this is how some banks.
So they're working on those rules and that program. But right now, until that gets completely finalized, they're left with the old program, which is what they sent to me, which was on 3 months plus 1 day, you have to pay 4 months of your mortgage all at once, which is crazy, right? But yeah, no, they basically said pay your mortgage this month, and then by your next due date, we'll have everything ironed out. So I mean, it is what it is. We'll be fine, but it's still frustrating because you see when you see big bills like this, and we saw this with the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act picks winners and losers. Again, this is all about projection with Democrats. Democrats like to accuse the Republicans of only caring about big business, trying to pick the winners and losers. But the Democrats do the same thing. When they passed the Affordable Care Act, they picked the winners and the losers. The winners under that bill were the uninsured and the underinsured, and people in the low to lower middle income families, right? When you mentioned self-employed Americans, people who work for themselves, they were the hardest hit by the Affordable Care Act because they didn't necessarily qualify for the subsidies, right? And the plans available on the exchange were complete CRAP, right? So we see that again here, where there's the immediate relief goes towards people who have federal mortgages. The immediate relief, they're just picking winners and losers again, right? And that's all it is. Republicans have their winners and losers. Democrats have their winners and losers. And usually it's somewhere in the middle that we end up with.
But Democrats aren't picking winners and losers. That's not what they're doing. They're finding opportunity in chaos. This has nothing to do with winners or losers. Winners or losers don't mean anything to them. We're all pawns in this game that they get to play to get what they want in order to create more subsistence, an environment where people literally are saying, please tell me, give me pennies, give me scraps, keep me hungry. Democrats like to keep everybody hungry. They've created a system of welfare that people are just grateful they get that card. They don't want to lose that card, that WIC card, that thing that gives them the ability to get free food subsistence or food stamps. They don't want to give that up.
Yeah.
They're afraid to rock the boat because, well, if we rock the boat and we don't have them over there giving us free stuff, we won't get our card.
Yeah.
And then you see the people that break out of that mold, that are smart enough to figure out, hey, I'm going to get my education, I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to get away from that card. That card is handcuffs.
Yeah. What I mean when I say that they pick winners and losers is that the bill makes it illegal to evict someone from a rental, right? So the renters don't have to pay their rent for at least a couple months. But since the people who own the rentals most likely are doing it self-employed, they don't qualify for unemployment if they're not getting their rent checks. So the only thing at their disposal would be one of the loans you're talking about. So the renters are able to avoid paying their rent for a couple months, but the actual landlords, the people who rely on that income to survive, have to take out a loan to make up the difference. That's what I mean by winners and losers. There's some people who benefit a hell of a lot more than others, and in this case, it's the self-employed, it's the independent contractors, it's people in the gig economy who were really in a lot of ways left out of the bill. Yeah, you can still apply for partial unemployment under the terms of the stimulus package. Yeah, there's still some stuff available to you, but it's not nearly as much as we're given to employees, given to actual employees. So that's what I mean when I say that they're picking winners and losers, because a lot of times I like to think that we're all losers anytime Democrats get a bill that they want through Congress, but they do have in their mind a list of people who they want to benefit and a list of people who they want to be hurt. Look at it this way, Joe. The stimulus package. Do you know who is not allowed to benefit from the stimulus?
No, who?
Donald Trump. There is a provision within the stimulus bill that prohibits any government official from accessing stimulus funds to help one of their businesses or a business owned by a family member. So what that means is every single hotel in the entire country will get to apply for these loans, except for the ones that have Trump emblazoned on the side. Because because the president of the United States family owns that hotel. That's something that Democrats fought an entire week to get added to the bill. They held up the relief. They held up the relief to cause economic pain. Yeah, that's the question. Well, the ultimate question is her family gets a lot of money through infrastructure projects. Will that provision be in the next bill that they're talking about with infrastructure? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. But they held up the stimulus for an entire week to make sure that Donald Trump's company would go out of business. That's what they want to do. They want Hilton. They want every hotel to be able to get this, except for Trump properties. It's sickening. There are Trump employees who will not be able to go back to work because the Democrats snuck that in. So that's what I mean when I say there's winners and losers, because the Democrats are very interested in creating the losers. They want the wealthy to have pain. They want Donald Trump and his family to feel pain, and they want conservatives to feel pain, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
But the problem is that you don't even realize how many people are hurting, that they just don't. This proves to you, it should prove to every American that it makes no difference. It makes no difference to them that they're saving your life. They don't care about the 200,000 people that are going to die. They certainly don't care about the 800,000 people that are going to commit suicide. All they're saying to themselves is, we lost 800,000 people. Oh, it's so sad. Let's get on TV and blame Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Let's say it's all his fault. 800,000 people died. It's the same thing. I'm closing the borders to any flights to China. Oh, you're a racist. Oh, we didn't do anything fast enough.
Yeah.
Oh, we should have closed it a while ago. I tried to. And you clowns said, let's not close it.
Yeah.
This is the part that drives me crazy, is that we're not smart enough as people. They think that we're stupid because we act stupid. We let it happen. I can tell you what's going to happen. If enough of us had enough courage, right, to storm Normandy, the beaches of Normandy, right? If we had enough courage, if you can get enough of us to go down to the state houses and say, we've had enough.
Yeah.
Let's get back to work. We don't want to sit in our houses anymore. You say we're going to die. We're not dying. We're not dying. This is a virus. You have a cure? Great. Did it help those 1,100 people? Oh, it did? Give us all that drug. Let us just have that. And are some people going to die? Yes. Yes, they are. But are we going to burn down our economy in the meantime? No, we're not.
No, we can't. And if the drug proves as successful as the early indications show, then there's going to be a lot of people who call for that to be used as a prophylactic to let people go out and about. And yeah, if they get the disease, then that drug would at least theoretically help mitigate it, help them recover faster. But yeah, if this ends up being the game changer that we're all hoping it will be, then it'll make perfect sense. Then we'll really start having that conversation of what do we need to do? How many of these pills do we need to reopen the economy? Because we can't live like this. We can't live.
No, we can't.
I'm getting cabin fever. And before this, I worked from home.
I'm not staying in the house. So how's that? I'm not staying in the house. I don't care what order you give me. I carry around a piece of paper. You know what it is, Max? Do you know what that piece of paper is?
Constitution.
The Constitution.
I got it.
This is my walking papers right here. I can go anywhere I want.
Yeah.
And some people are going to say, Joe, you're being selfish. Am I being selfish? Is that me being selfish, or is that me saying 100% I have no desire to get in the middle of this hysteria? I have no desire, and I'm putting myself at risk. I put no one else at risk.
Well, it also helps that some of the businesses that you're involved with have been deemed essential. So I mean, there are legitimate reasons for you to go out and about. You're not just driving around because you don't want to be inside.
I don't drive around just to. I don't drive around just to cause issues. No, I don't. I have legitimately things I have to do, right? So I'm not in a place right now where I'm willing to sit back and watch people I care about, and even people that I don't even know that I care about. I'm not in a place where I'm even willing to let that happen. I'm just not. And one of the reasons why we're doing a podcast every day is because we believe it's time that people start listening. And I go, Max, let's have a podcast every day. I don't want to do it once a week. I want to do it every day. I want to talk about this stuff every day. I want to give people encouragement to have courage.
Yeah.
And I don't care if you're 80 years old or if you're 15 years old. At some point, let's shake loose and wake up and say, why? Just ask yourself the simple question.
Oh, yeah.
Why are we willing to sacrifice 800,000 people to protect 200,000? I can do the math. So we want 4 times as many people to die. Oh, and let's talk about the 40% of our country that is below the poverty line. We want to make them poor. And by the way, the people that are 20% higher than that, so that next 20%, which is the lower middle class, we want them to go down into the poor class now so that we can keep them hungry again. Hey, there's hope that you might get back into that environment. Then you have the middle class, who represents another 20%. We're going to lower them even further. And we're building this gap between the rich, who, by the way, are asking us for donations. They're asking us to donate money to them to help their warehouse workers.
I'll tell you.
The guy's got $50 billion in the bank, and he's asking me to give money to pay his employees.
Yeah,
I'm out.
Yeah, I saw something the other day of doctors asking for donations because so that they can all get takeout. I was like, nah, I'm out. I'm out at that point.
But they get paid.
Yeah, I know. Well, actually,
anyway.
a lot of doctors, the way that a lot of doctors are hired is they're working for staffing companies. So that a lot of doctors don't actually work for the hospitals. They work for staffing companies that contract with the hospitals. And those staffing companies are actually losing money because non-essential surgeries that are the big money makers for them are all being canceled. And the insurance companies are really slow to bill on the procedures that hospitals are doing because they're completely messed up with people working from home and trying to figure that out. So actually there have been doctors losing, having their pay cut, which is crazy to think that in a time like this, doctors are facing pay cuts, but it is happening in some hospitals, depending on what kind of employer relationship they have.
Because there is opportunity in chaos. Because the people that own those hospitals and own those corporations see an opportunity to take from people and give it to themselves. We were talking to this client, and he got this email, and it said, effective immediately on April 1st, all invoices that come in will go from a net 30 to a net 90. And I said to the client, I go, wait a minute, the business that they're in, they get paid anyway.
Yeah.
So now you have a business that's trying to get another 60 days and take advantage of other small businesses so that they can actually dry them up and make them hungry as well.
Yeah.
To me, it floored me that we're even dealing with that. It floored me.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that we haven't really, that we're just seeing now. A lot of the consequences, which we knew would come. We knew there would be consequences for shutting down the economy like this. We knew there'd be consequences for shelter-in-place orders across the country. And every day we're seeing more and more of them come out. Well, we need to take a real quick break, but when we come back, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about this story that we're covering in Conservative Daily today, which is USAID employees caught buying personal protective equipment and medical equipment, and instead of it going to American hospitals, going overseas as foreign aid. So don't go anywhere. We're going to cover that right when we come back.
Ronald Reagan famously said that our freedoms are never more than a generation away from extinction. Conservative Daily exists to make sure that never happens. With our community of 700,000 members, we fight every day to hold Congress's feet to the fire and stop them from surrendering our rights and freedoms. The fight to take this country back is not over. Please join our movement right now by going to conservative-daily.com and clicking the subscribe button to sign up for our free call to action newsletters. We have a chance to save this country, but only if we all work together. Again, this is conservative-daily.com, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the top.
And we're back from our break. We are covering all things coronavirus, the madhouse that is this country. It's crazy what we are doing with this self-inflicted gunshot wound that we are delivering to ourselves right now. We were talking a little bit about the economic impact of what happens when you shut down the country like that. I want to shift gears because this really made my blood boil, Joe. And this is a story that we've been covering today, and it is out of USAID. So anyone who doesn't know what USAID is, it's the United States Agency for International Development. Basically, that's the part of the government that disperses foreign aid to other countries. Now, there's other parts of the government that get involved with foreign aid, but USAID is the main one. It's actually a branch of the State Department. And what USAID has been doing, and I went through all of their press releases, they've been bragging about this for about a month, is they've been buying up protective equipment, masks, face shields, gloves, gowns, right, scrubs. They've been buying up medical equipment, and they've been sending it overseas as foreign aid. So instead of sending food aid to countries, instead of sending water where there's a drought, instead of sending, well, I guess malaria drugs are all the rage now, they've been sending medical equipment. And the Trump administration got wind of this in the last week, and they shut it down. They shut it down because it is shocking, Joe, how much taxpayer money is now being funneled overseas. I showed this list to you. It's a really long list. We don't need to go through all of it. We're going to have a video on the Conservative Daily YouTube page and Facebook later today going through all of this. But basically, USAID says that they want to spend $274 million on emergency health assistance for foreign countries. They've already dispersed $100 million, and Congress has now given them an extra $95 million in the stimulus. And it's really crazy when you see countries getting millions of dollars in protective equipment, in tests. We talk about how we don't have enough tests to go around. People are going without tests, and we're sending pallets of Chinese coronavirus tests overseas. We're talking about Americans, doctors. Just let's look at the doctors. Doctors are being forced to wear homemade masks. They don't have enough gowns, so they have to repurpose trash bags. And when they get sick, they have to go into quarantine, which hurts the entire system because there's one less doctor, one less nurse out there to take care of a sick American who needs their help, right? So while they're struggling to try and get this equipment, USAID is sending it overseas by the ton. It just completely blows your mind because you would think at a time like this, it should be America first. No matter what you think about foreign aid, no matter what you think about sending money to the UN or other organizations, whether you support it or don't support it, right now it should be America first. But what we're seeing, again, from Democrats is that this was one of their priorities. They held up the stimulus bill for an entire week to get as much foreign aid as they could. And
Max,
it's crazy.
Max, are you surprised? Are you surprised when you have Illa Omar, whatever her name is, and
Ilhan
Talib?
Omar.
Yeah, whatever. I can't even say their names without being disgusted by the fact that they believe, and a group of them that represents people in our community, that we need to take our money from hardworking Americans and ship it overseas to somebody else. And look, I know people overseas are suffering, but I also know that there are people right down the street from me suffering.
Yeah.
There are people living homelessly. There are people that are unemployed. 3.3 million people in the last week unemployed. And you want me to give money to somebody else. And that's why you can't help but look and say to yourself, they don't care about us. This has nothing to do with us. We are a function of, we are a tool for them. We are a function of their system.
Yeah.
We are the input variable. Just give us more. And if that's not true, then why are we trillions of dollars in debt? Why are we sending our jobs over to China, right? Why are we not supporting manufacturing and the things that should happen in the United States? Why are we farming them out? Why are we making it more difficult for businesses to operate?
Well, that's globalization, right? That's what both parties have been trying to ram down our throats for the last couple decades. I'll tell you, I'm not surprised that this has been happening, because we knew, and we've been warning about this, that this was happening. What I'm surprised about is how USAID is bragging about this. I just pulled up this press release. It was put out on March 20th, and it reads, the U.S. government through USAID is granting more than, I don't know that currency, let's just say $913,000 to 3 specialized organizations to help the Kyrgyz Republic. So that's Kyrgyzstan. The first recipient of the grant is the World Health Organization, which, Joe, the World Health Organization has been carrying the water of the Chinese Communist Party since the very beginning. They're the ones who lied to the world and said that COVID-19 was not transmittable human to human, right? The WHO has been a mess during this whole thing. The next recipient is some local health system, and then the third recipient is the Red Crescent Society, which is the Islamic form of the Red Cross. But here's what this actually entails. When they say $900,000, Joe, it includes personal protective equipment of 10,000 masks, 10,000 gloves, 1,400 gowns, and 200 protective goggles. So I look at that and I say 10,000 masks. When I see that hospitals are short masks, when they don't have enough gloves, right? And I look and see that just 11 days ago, we sent 10,000 masks to the Kyrgyz Republic, which, to be honest, Joe, I'm a student of geography. If you told me to point to a map, I could probably get you into the right area, but I do not promise I'd get you to Kyrgyzstan. I think I'd get to the general vicinity.
You get close. Yeah,
I can't promise that I'd hit the actual
all
country.
the stands.
But the American people have no idea where this country is. How do you sell this to the American people? How do you sell this to the average person scared right now and being fed the nonstop news stories about how hospitals don't have enough gear? People are dying because there's not enough gear. They're blaming Trump. They're blaming Trump for not having enough gear, whereas the career officials in the State Department, who are not Trump loyalists by any means, are doing this. They're sending it overseas. I cannot fathom how people aren't up in arms about this. And I think that as this story gets out there more, as people start realizing just how much PPE has been shipped out of the country as foreign aid, I think people are going to start getting really pissed off. Because, Joe, that's just one country. I sent you the list of countries. It's $100 million spread across almost every major country. And it's just they're handing it out like it's candy. And do you know how this was all caught, Joe?
No.
So the White House Coronavirus Task Force has been calling foreign countries that aren't experiencing big outbreaks. And they've been asking for those countries to send us medical equipment and protective gear so that we can stop the outbreak here, and then saying when it hits your shores, we'll turn around and help you once we beat it here. So they called Thailand, Joe. And the Thai official on the other end of the phone was listening, very, very attentive. And then when when they were finished delivering the ask, the Thai official said he was surprised He'd have to talk to other people about it because Thailand was still waiting for the second shipment of PPE to arrive. Right? We haven't just sent them one pallet of protective gear. We've sent them a second pallet. And Mike Pence and the task force were asking a country for equipment that country was waiting to receive from us. That's how secretive this has been. The White House didn't even know this was happening. So they suspended all of this and to look at it, but it's insane because Congress just approved $95 million more in foreign aid funding for USAID, and unless this is stopped, they're going to keep doing it.
Well, this leads me down to the WHO, right? Organization, World Health Organization, creating the hysteria around this quote unquote pandemic. And you could say what you want. Joe, listen, it exists. The virus. I didn't say the virus didn't exist. I said that it doesn't merit the hysteria that's been created. This is not Ebola. This is a virus. So we put ourselves in a position where we're giving money to foreign organizations. That's that opportunity in chaos, right? That there's chaos out there, chaos. How can we create hyperbole that actually leads to us actually getting a benefit? We can ask the United States, we need your help. We need more funding. All the while it's coming into one pocket and going out into the other. And you could tell me it doesn't happen, but I spent years in the Middle East and in Africa. I spent years dealing with organizations like
UNICEF, WHO, those kinds of things. Yeah.
USAID. Do you know what they used to call food subsidies that USAID dropped into certain environments in North Africa?
What they call it?
Black market.
Oh yeah, because it gets sold, and when it doesn't get sold,
it never reaches the people, and it never reaches the people that need it. We would walk into villages. I tell you a story. We walk into a village, and we see this truck, right? You'd have these little pickup trucks. Most of them were always like Toyota, like Helixes. And they would be stacked in the back with these USAID bags, right? Grain bags.
Yeah.
And I would always ask people, I go say, hey, whose is that? And I said, yeah, they're selling it to the people.
Yeah.
And and in that environment, you don't ever say anything. You just keep your mouth shut because you really don't know. You're in a very mixed environment.
Yeah.
You do not want to be the one to rub raw.
You don't want to talk to the guy who's profiting from it, right?
Right.
You don't want to make that mistake.
But that's what was happening. They were selling it to the people. And so USAID, somebody at USAID sells this to someone or profits from it. It's a huge business. It's a booming business.
Yeah.
And then they sell it to the people they're supposed to be giving it to. And you'd say, oh, that's not happening. I can't count 10 times or 20 times I saw this happen. I can count over 100 times that I saw this happen.
Oh,
You'd go, well, why didn't you report it? Well, it's like a rabid dog. It's really nice to you and it rubs up against you and it's rabid. It's your friend until it turns around and bites you. So it's a friend till it's not your friend. And you don't know where the head of the snake is. You don't know where the dog is. You don't even know who the dog is. And you don't know who's rabid.
Yeah.
So you do the best you can to actually solve problems in those environments. And you let the graft and corruption happen around you as you try to normalize as best you can in those environments how to help the people that you're there to help.
Yeah.
But it's happening all over the place. And the entire time, people in the U.S. are saying, oh, we need to help those people. While we walk by people who literally are self-destructing. We walk by small businesses and medium businesses and people that work really hard 15 hours a day while government workers go on vacation in the middle of a crisis.
Yeah.
While Congress goes on vacation and government workers are said, hey, stay at home. We're going to pay you. And teachers get paid. And look, I'm all for paying teachers. I am 100%. But we're creating an environment where university education is through the roof. Teachers are yelling that they want more money. Government workers are yelling they want more money. Unions are saying they want more money. And the rest of us that support that system, we are literally dying.
Yeah.
We are trying to be innovative just to get things across the finish line. And those people that are retiring today are saying to themselves, man, I'm really glad that I'm retired. But they're coming for them next.
Yeah.
They're coming for them next. They're going to make cuts there because the thirst that the government has for what we have is unquenchable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was talking a few years ago. This must have been like maybe a decade ago. I was talking to a USAID official and he was explaining just how horribly USAID is managed oftentimes. And he said, he mentioned a lot of the things that you're mentioning, how people would sell the food, sell the equipment, but he also said that even when the food, for example, actually does reach the people that they want to reach, a lot of times they don't even send the right stuff. So he told me one story where there was a famine. I believe it was either in Mexico or Central America, and USAID said, we're going to come in, we're going to give you corn. The problem was they dumped a bunch of corn. Their problem was it was the wrong kind of corn. They didn't do the research to actually see what kind of corn the people wanted, and they ended up sending the kind of corn that area of the world uses for livestock feed, right? In that area of the world, people do not eat that kind of corn. It's not on the menu. You give it to your livestock, yes, but you do not feed it to humans. So an entire shipment of food was wasted. It rotted. The people said, we have no use for this. We'll let our animals eat it, sure, but it's not going to help us at all. He told me so many stories about even when it doesn't get sold, it doesn't get stolen, the incompetence within USAID can be so striking at times that it really makes you wonder what the whole point of it all is, right? Because this is the whole point of USAID is to give foreign aid to countries, and there's supposed to be a national benefit to it, right? It's supposed to be helping countries, and we're supposed to get some kind of benefit from it. And I guess you can argue now technically that if you're going to help stop COVID-19 overseas, that has a benefit to the United States, but it's already here in the United States, Joe. It's already here. Stopping COVID-19 in Burma has very little consequence to Americans right now. And yet Burma, I'm going down this list, Burma is receiving $3.8 million, Joe, in water and sanitation supplies. So sanitation supplies, think bleach, think disinfectants. Think about how Americans can't find any bleach. They can't get any disinfectants off the shelves at all. The shelves are bare. And yet we're sending it overseas by the pallet. It's so infuriating. And I'm thankful to the Trump administration figuring this out and putting a stop to it. But I know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know that there's a lot of other stuff going on like this. Trump earlier in the week talked about how he didn't understand how hospitals were needing hundreds of thousands of masks when the projections said they only need tens of thousands of masks, right? When we see medical equipment that we sent to New York being stored in warehouses and then the governor complaining that it never arrived, there's a lot of hoarding going on. There's a lot of states. I definitely believe this is the case with New York. They wanted to get out in front of this with testing because they wanted to get the priority of the federal assistance, and which makes sense. When you're the governor of New York, you want to put your people first. But these hospitals, no projection is suggesting that the hospitals need a delivery of 1 million masks right now, right? That's not in the projection. They might want to stockpile them, but right now that's not their actual need. And earlier this week, Trump said, hey, these numbers don't make sense. I've heard some stories of masks getting stolen. Guys should check that out. The media went crazy. Joe Biden went crazy. But sure enough, masks are being stolen from hospitals. And the requests that hospitals are giving to the federal government and the states are taking theft into account, right? They are taking that into account, saying, okay, we really need this much, but we should ask for this much in case the X amount gets stolen. So it's crazy what's going on out there. But to think that we're in this position where there's not enough equipment to go around, and we're sending it to Afghanistan, we're sending it to India, we're sending it to Kazakhstan, Nepal is getting tests and laboratory equipment. We're sending everything overseas. And listen, Joe, when you're on an airplane and you're about to take off, the stewardess says to make sure you put the mask on your own face before you help someone else. That applies here too. We need to take care of ourselves before we help other people. Because if we don't have enough equipment to take care of our people, there's going to be a big problem.
But there already is a big problem.
Well, no, we have a big problem, yes. But if we continue sending these masks overseas, Joe, USAID is bidding against the states, bidding against the federal government for these masks. Right. They're driving the price up. Right. So that they can send it overseas. Right.
While the president is saying he he's actually what is it? The war. Man, what is wrong with me?
Defense
today?
Production Act.
Defense Production Act is saying, hey, you're going to have to make N95 masks.
Yeah.
Right. And while we're doing that, we're literally leaking out the bottom again. This is that graft and corruption that happens. That gets sold on the black market. People lose track of those things. And if you don't think they lose track of it, they lose track of weapons.
Oh, absolutely.
There are thousands of tanks.
That was what Benghazi was about. Benghazi was about trying to get the weapons back that we had given the Libyan militias. Yeah.
Well, we abandon equipment over in these foreign countries all the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it just comes down to sensibility. As a country, as people, we have to be sensible. When we run out of money in our checking account, we can't walk over and say, "Hey, I know I'm negative $10 million."
Yeah.
But just trust me, I'll pay you back the $10 million. Oh, I know that I'm negative $20 million, but I've got this great deal that's going to happen, and I'm going to be able to pay back that 20. I know that we're at $100 million, but my company, I got to pay my people. So, I'm sorry we're at negative 100 million, but you got to carry that for me.
Yeah.
We have to be sensible with what we do as people. The only people that don't have to be sensible are the ones that are actually forcing us to work and taking 30% of what we make. And they're not only taking 30% of what we make, then they tax our gas, and they tax our homes, and they tax our schools, and they tax what you eat, and they tax what you buy.
There's a question. There's a question. Why are we still paying the gas tax if no one's out and about?
Right.
I mean, you'll never see taxes like this go away.
But you won't see any taxes go away at all. The only time that something expires is when it actually benefits the people.
Joe, schools are closed, so why are my property taxes still up? Why am I still paying for schools? Right? It's lots of these things. Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But it's a take mentality. I think what infuriates me the most is that you understand the USAID process. You understand international aid. It's one person doesn't get to make that decision. It's a very bureaucratic process where a bunch of people sign off on it. It goes across a bunch of desks before it actually gets dispersed. And then there's the whole part of actually distributing it. A lot of people have to put their eyeballs on this. What makes me furious is it took the Vice President of the United States to take a look at this before someone finally raised their hand and said, this is BS, right? All of those State Department officials looked at what was happening in America, right? They were shipping aid to the Kyrgyz Republic on March 20th. So that's not that long ago, right? They saw what was happening for the American people, happening to the American people. And instead of saying, hey, you know what? It's messed up. We shouldn't be doing this. We should be giving this to hospitals. Everyone in the chain of command, everyone who signed off on that disbursement agreed, yeah, this makes sense. Let's do it. That's what pisses me off, because you would like to think that someone other than the vice president, it shouldn't have to get to the vice president before someone raises their hand and says this is BS, right? You would think that someone else in the bureaucracy would recognize how bad of an idea this is. But no, they didn't. They sent out $100 million before the White House caught it. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. And you know what? Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have been saying that Trump has blood on his hands. These officials, without a doubt, have American blood on their hands. The fact that they bought and shipped protective equipment out of the country to foreign countries and left our hospitals at a disadvantage, there is without a doubt that there's blood on their hands. You don't want to get that morbid. You don't want to get that dark. But if we're going to start assigning blame like that, then yes, there is blame to go around at USAID. And I truly hope, I know that there are congressmen who are now calling on all foreign aid to be scratched completely. And I completely agree with them, right? We've been calling on that for years. We wanted to pull the plug for years, Joe, on foreign aid. If this is what ends up doing it, I wish we would have done it sooner, but it would be a great thing for the country if that goes through.
Yeah, I can't. I want to. Oh, I'm just going to be quiet for a minute. I don't. What I don't want to do is I don't want to have a heart attack and die because I'm just getting myself all worked out of the stress. But
Oh no, I feel the same way.
I'm not willing to give up. I am not willing. I am not willing to give up my freedoms. I am not willing to give up who I am in order and sacrifice my fellow Americans for, a maybe. Like maybe 100,000 to 200,000 people die. And you say that we're not talking about the same thing when we talk about the Y2K bug. But hundreds of billions, if not over $1 trillion $1 trillion was spent on the Y2K bug, on something that was it was a myth.
Yeah.
It was a mathematical myth. And I remember back in the years and years and years ago, I did this, I built an algorithm that helped me decipher whether or not the probability of that actually happening, of computer systems shutting down based on it not recognizing that it was going back to the year 1900.
Yeah.
Right. And so the variable that was often missed was that in order to go back to 1900, you would have to have some sort of system that systematically was built to understand the element of time. And I used to get in these conversations with friends of mine that are mathematicians, and we would sit down and draw out these things. And we had this conversation about the probabilities. And I go, well, the probability of that actually happening if you did nothing is near zero. But that 0.1%, 0.2% caused us to spend $1 trillion on a problem. That's just in the U.S. If you think about globally, we were spending trillions of dollars. And what happened when the clock struck midnight is nothing happened.
Yeah.
I do remember that night though, because I had a big party at my house, and I went downstairs and I hit the main switch and the lights went out and everything went out, and everybody freaked out. I had probably 80 people in my house, and I couldn't stop laughing. I left it off for like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I went upstairs, and I have no idea what's happened. Right. And then somebody was smart enough to look out the window, and everybody else's lights in the neighborhood were on. And they're like, what happened? We're the only house it's affected by.
Yeah.
And I go, I didn't prepare for the Y2K bug. So I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Then I went downstairs, I turned the light on, and I just said to the people there, and I remember saying it way back when, don't believe everything you hear. And then you have other people that said, well, if we wouldn't have done that, then the Y2K bug would have annihilated businesses. But you had thousands of businesses, millions of businesses that did nothing.
Yeah.
Didn't even take it into consideration. I'm talking big corporations that said, this is a joke.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? But here we are talking about a second wave, a quote unquote second wave. Right? And you have people writing stories that they're publishing, saying, well, the coronavirus 6 feet might not be enough.
Yeah, it might be 27 feet. Did you see Dr. Fauci at the press conference when they asked him that? He's like, that's stupid. Yeah, I think that if I stood over here and I went all the way back and I went and hocked a loogie, maybe I could get it to go 27 feet. He's like, that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about normal situations. But yeah, no, the projections went from the millions to the hundreds of thousands. And instead of that being pitched as good news, they're looking for more stories. Like MSNBC all today has been running the story of what would have happened if Trump did a better job, right? They're not even letting us fight this in the now. They're trying to play Monday morning quarterback before it's even over, right? Because they have their political agenda at play here. So it's absolutely infuriating when we see what the media is doing, what companies are doing, what politicians are doing. We see what USAID is doing. We're going to continue covering this. We're going to continue trying to shine a light on this because the media doesn't give this the time. No one's going to go through. First of all, no one knows what USAID is, right? Most people don't know. And the media is not going to go through every single country and explain what is going on. And yet it's right there on the internet, Joe. It's right there on USAID's press release page. They were proud of it. 2 days ago, they proudly announced how much money worth of protective equipment and medical equipment they're shipping overseas.
Yeah, well, these are trying times. I just think that right now we have to be the contrarian voice. We have to find other people that are willing to be that contrarian voice. When is the first shot going to be fired? When are people going to wake up? When is someone going to have enough courage to talk about the sensibility of those 200,000 people. We send people to war every day, and we never talk about the deaths that occur by sending them to war.
Yeah.
Yet we're sitting here having a conversation about what if. Well, what if the sky falls? If the sky falls on 200,000 people, it's a whole lot better than falling on 330 million people. Who's going to stand up? Who's going to have enough courage to say enough is enough? I saw President Trump walk right up to that gate and almost say it.
Yeah.
He said, "Look, the cure can't be worse than the virus itself, and we're in the place right now where it is worse." And people are rushing around to jump through hoops to get this economic stimulus money in order to be able to pay their employees, but for 2 months.
Yeah.
It's going to pay for 2 months. What about the people that after the 2 months is over, because they're still running around saying, "Oh, I know that only 8,000 people died." I'm telling you right now, 100,000 people are not going to die. It is a lie. They are going to lie. They're going to keep lying until we call them out for their lies. And we tell them, look, we're going to all wash our hands. We're going to all be sensible. If we're sick, we're going to stay home. If you have a issue in the marketplace and you have a immunity issue, stay home. If you're elderly, sequester yourself or quarantine yourself. I don't care what you do, but stay off the streets. Let the rest of it kind of happen so that we can continue to put our economy back on track.
Yeah.
What we're doing right now is the opposite of that. We are burning people to the stake, to the ground.
Yeah.
We're watching it happen while we sit there and say, because we want to be good people and we don't want to talk about reality, so we can say, hey, what if your grandparent died? Well, what if my grandparent died? What if I died? I'm in a higher risk category. What if I died? I would gladly give up my life to make sure that it would be a great sacrifice, even if nobody ever knew about it. Shot was never actually fired. It would be a great sacrifice for me to give up my life to make sure I protected the other 300 million people.
Yeah.
And that is really the thing we need to talk about.
Yeah. Well, we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep covering this. But that's going to have to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. If you like this, if you want to keep receiving these podcasts, make sure you subscribe on the Apple Store, on Google Play, or you can go to Podbean or conservative-daily.com and go to the podcast section of the website. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country is not over, but the only way we can win is if we all fight together.